In this video we will take a look at the slides of ovary. The ovary is covered by a single layer of low cuboidal or squamous cells called germinal epithelium. Here it's cuboidal epithelium, which is continuous with the mesothelium of the visceral peritoneum. Inferior to the germinal epithelium is a dense connective tissue layer called the tunica albuginea. Here the ovary contains a cortex with the follicles, fibrocytes and collagen and elastic fibers. Approximately here it's a cortex, and in the center is a medulla with blood vessels and nerves. The medulla exhibits a dense irregular connective tissue, and large blood vessels from the medulla distribute small vessels to all parts of the ovarian cortex. Numerous ovarian follicles are seen in various stages of development in the stroma of cortex. The most numerous follicles are primordial follicles with primary oocytes and one layer of squamous cells surrounded the primary oocytes. Approximately here is a primordial follicle. The primordial follicles are located in the periphery of the cortex and inferior to the tunica albuginea. Primordial follicles contains immature small primary oocytes that gradually increases in size as a follicle develop into primary, secondary and mature follicles. Before the ovulation of the mature follicles, all developing follicles contains a primary oocyte. Smaller follicles with a cuboidal or columnar or stratified cuboidal cells that surround the primary oocytes are called primary follicles. So here it's a primary follicles, also here. Here you can see only one layer of cuboidal cells, and here is many layers of follicular cells, also called granulosa cells. So maybe I show you another primary follicles here, and here it's only with one layer of cuboidal cells. And here you can see many layers of follicular cells or granulosa cells. Here you can see bigger oocytes. As the follicles increases in size, a fluid called liquor folliculi or follicular liquid begins to accumulate between the follicular cells and now called the granulosa cells, for example here. The fluid areas eventually fuse to form a fluid-filled cavity called the antrum. Follicles with antral cavities are called secondary antral follicles. Here is it depends on literature, but we call the secondary follicles this structure. Inside you can see oocytes, primary oocytes here, which is surrounded by zona pelucida, rich of the proteoglycans and glycoproteins. Here is a zona pelucida, eosinophilic layer surrounded oocytes, many granulosa cells here, and here is a small cavities filled by liquor folliculi, and these granulosa cells are surrounded by theca, first layer called theca interna here, which contains vessels, and theca externa, which is formed by fibrocytes. It's a connective tissue capsule of follicles. Between the granulosa cells and theca is a basal membrane, also called membrane of Slaviansky. Here it's a very thin membrane between the granulosa cells and theca interna. So this is the secondary follicles, and the mature follicles, I switch another slides, contains only one cavity, which is filled by follicular liquid, one antrum, but in this section it's not visible oocytes. I draw it. Here it's not in the center, it's peripherally located oocytes with nuclei, nucleus and nucleolus, surrounded by zona pelucida, eosinophilic layer, and few granulosa cells surround these oocyte with zona pelucida. These granulosa cells called corona radiata, it's surrounded oocytes, and bridge between the oocytes and granulosa cells which aligned the antrum is called cumulus oophorus. This is the group cells, granulosa cells between the oocytes and granulosa cells lined the antrum is called cumulus oophorus. So, and here is a membrane, basal membrane, or a membrane of Slaviansky, and here is a theca interna and externa. So this is the mature follicle, or Graafian's follicle. It's a very big structure located deeper in the cortex. So here it's a detail. Here is a granulosa cells, membrane of Slaviansky, theca interna with the blood vessels, and theca externa with the fibrocytes, collagen fibers. So this is the mature Graafian follicle with one antrum, but without oocytes in this section. Here is another Graafian follicle. Here you can see a primary follicle. It's good visible zona pelucida, surrounded primary oocytes. Here is also primary follicles. Here is a small primary follicles and primordial follicles. So after ovulation, the large follicles collapses and transforms into a temporary endocrine organ, the corpus luteum. Here you can see very big structure. This is similar size as the graphene follicle. Very big structure, corpus luteum. The granulosa cells of the follicle transform into light staining granulosa lutein cells, and theca interna cells become the dark staining theca lutein cells of the functioning corpus luteum. The granulosa lutein cells are large, have a large vesicular nuclei and stain lightly owing to lipids inclusions. So this is the granulosa lutein cells form the most of corpus luteum, and here is a very dark stain lutein theca lutein cells, which is located external to the granulosa lutein cells on the periphery of the glandular epithelium. The theca externa cells form a poorly defined capsule around the corpus luteum, so it's not good to identify in this section. So, and I have another ovary stained by Mallory trichrome. That means that collagen fibers are blue. In this ovary contain mature follicle, graphene follicle, also without oocytes. It's not visible in this section. This is the fluid follicular liquid and liquor of folliculi here. The granulosa cells are visible here and here, and the theca interna, which is contained blood vessels with erythrocytes. Here is yellowish erythrocytes inside the capillaries. So here is granulosa cells, and here is a theca interna and externa. Approximately here, it's not sharp border without connective tissue of cortex and theca externa. So this is the mature follicle, graphene follicle, and here you can see blue staining structure here. It's bad color, but this structure is called corpus albicans. This is the connective tissue scar, connective tissue with fibrocytes, fibroblasts, collagen fibers, and this is the early corpus albicans, and this is later corpus albicans. This is the smaller structure. Here is also scar on in ovary. So that's all for the ovary. The germinal epithelium, which is covered the ovary. Inferior to the germinal epithelium is a tunica albuginea. This is connective tissue. Capsule. In the cortex, you can find many stages of follicle, development follicle. The first stage is primordial follicle, oocytes surrounded by one layer of squamous cells. Primary follicles contains one layer of cuboidal cells called follicular cells. Primary follicles also contains many layers of cuboidal cells. Secondary follicles contains small cavities filled by follicular liquid. Oocytes is surrounded by eosinophilic layer called zona pelucida, and the follicles which is capsuled by theca, interna and externa, and between the granulosa cells and the theca is a very thin basement membrane, also called membrane of Slaviansky. Mature follicles contains one antrum. It's a one big cavity which is lined by granulosa cells, and oocyte is primary oocyte is located to periphery into the antrum, and the oocyte is surrounded by corona radiata of granulosa cells, and bridge between the oocytes and granulosa cells called cumulus oophorus. After the ovulation, the granulosa cells and lutein cells transforms into granulosa lutein cells and theca lutein cells, which is produce progesterone, and after the death of corpus luteum, to transform into corpus albicans. This is the connective tissue scar. So thank you very much for your attention.